So here we are. This is my last day in Japan after 6 weeks. Just went by like that, and I'm on the way to Vietnam. And in this video, I want to talk about something that maybe is a little bit controversial, but it involves what is basically the dark side of Japan. And I think many people who choose to live here come to this realization because I've now interviewed a bunch of different expats, and they kind of come to the same conclusions. And I've also talked to quite a few locals who address these same issues with me. So it's kind of funny. Like, I was at a hotel in Nara, and the lady working at the front counter, I told her, yeah, you know, Nara is so beautiful, your culture is very beautiful. And her response to me was like, oh yes, I agree, my culture is very beautiful, but it has a dark side. So she had to throw in that little caveat just to correct me. And so I thought that was kind of telling. So in essence, you know, I've been to a lot of different countries, but among all the countries I've been to, Japan is the only one that I've kind of felt this profound sense of loneliness, and that is despite the fact that it's a very sophisticated, you know, I would say above first world level. I mean, it's way nicer than the United States. Everything is just basically honed to perfection in Japan. You can see this everywhere you go. I sometimes joke, even if you buy like the egg salad sandwich from 7-Eleven, it's way nicer here in Japan than it is probably anywhere else, because everything is perfected. Now, that being said, Japan is notorious for its unhealthy work customs. And this is the source, I think, of most of the problems. So, Japanese men, well, I suppose women too, but predominantly we call them salary men. These are individuals who work for, basically kind of like the white-collar, middle working class of Japan, are expected to put in so many hours into their company that nothing else in their lives matter. That includes their families, that includes their social lives, their hobbies. Everything has to revolve around the company. And that's a big problem, because it really damages the moral fabric of a country when literally your company is trying to keep you away from your family so you can clock more hours in. And we're talking like 16-hour days being quite standard for a lot of businessmen out here. Now, you can research this subject, and it goes deeper, and it gets scarier. So what I've learned is that when you join a big company in Japan, the company will, first of all, they'll invade your privacy by conducting medical checks on you periodically. So if there's an employee who's a little bit healthier than you are, that employee is going to get the benefits while they attempt to weed you out, thinking that if you're less healthy than somebody else, you're going to live not quite as long as that person, which means that's fewer hours that you'll be able to contribute to the company. So that's kind of how that reasoning goes. But the second thing they do that's very invasive, and this is something I've researched, so I don't know, you may want to look up these stats yourself, but apparently, and I think this is a big controversy, companies, when they see that there's things happening in an employee's personal life that could interfere with their abilities to work, they will purposefully sabotage that person's life. So if somebody gets married, they might transfer that person to a different town in an attempt to disrupt the marriage, disrupt the family, so that they stay committed to the company instead. So this, to me, seems to be in stark contrast to the rest of Asia, where the family is given #1 importance. So this could explain why we see articles like, why is Japan the loneliest country in Asia? Why is there an epidemic of elderly people dying alone? Also, why is the birth rate so low? Why is there a severe lack of romantic relationships in Japan? So it seems like a big part of that has to do with companies attempting to own the souls of their workers. Now, I feel like I can see this when I'm out and about, like on a subway. I mean, I just see rows of really unhappy people, and you know, I don't get that vibe anywhere else. Like the USA is also kind of a work-based culture. It's one of my criticisms about it. But even in the USA, like if I'm on the metro and the train in Los Angeles, yeah, there's like 6 druggies and a bunch of people who are, you know, really, they look super sketchy. But on the other hand, you know, you have people listening to music, you have people talking to each other, you have people sitting next to each other who don't know each other, striking up a conversation. And that's, you know, that's kind of nice. People just trying to get by the, you know, get through the workday. But when I'm here in Osaka, when I'm on the subway, it's like everybody just keeps their heads down, and everyone has like this kind of quiet desperation going on. So among all of the countries that I visit, that I go to in Asia, this is the only one I've experienced like that. So I find that pretty telling. Like honestly, I can go to Singapore, go to Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, any of these other countries I've been to many times, and it's the opposite. So everyone is like interactive, and you know, people's like work lives are really balanced. And you know, some of these countries, people don't make very much money. You know, I think significantly less by comparison to here, but still, they have. If you want to like quantify happiness, their happiness index is way higher. So, so almost like the moral of the story to me is that you can have a country that's quote perfect and has everything very, very well polished, but if there's a problem that's kind of in its soul, then it's going to mess everything up. I'm sorry. So a couple other points I want to think about. I think that we see this kind of culture that's, I mean, I would say it's very classist and to some extent sexist, because I know women have a really difficult time here. It's like kind of like Japan is a real patriarchy. You know, I hear feminists say that USA is a patriarchy, which I don't believe, because if you go to a place like Japan, you can see, okay, or of course even worse, like somewhere like Saudi Arabia, but you can kind of get an idea of like when there really is this sense that women's place needs to be dressing pretty and being pretty to look at. And not that I know anything about this topic, but Japanese porn, like you can really see these pathologies come out. For one, sexual frustration, but also kind of the sexism, a desire to dominate. There's a particular niche of Japanese porn, which is basically, shall we say, well, I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to get censored by YouTube, but let's just say R-A-P-E, and that's a big kind of fetish out here, and that alone is kind of disturbing. I'm just on the way to Namba. I actually took a wrong turn when I was walking there because I'm doing the video. I wasn't paying attention, so I'm gonna take a little detour, I reckon. So you know, so we see these pathologies come out, and that's a big problem as well. And I think that is, again, you know, it's all interconnected. So a couple other points though is that, you know, so why is the culture like that? Why does it have such an unhealthy work culture? And look, I mean, this culture, it's thousands of years old. And another thing about Japan that might turn people off is just the fact that it's so monocultural. Okay, so any other country I go to, like there's some awareness of the global culture, right? English is a big part of that. So in any Southeast Asian, any other Asian country, you'll see a lot more English being used because they know that it's the common language that people use between different countries. Here, even here in Osaka, you can go to the middle of the tourist area, and still like half the restaurants don't have signs in English. And to make matters worse, we have it's very well known that the Japanese are extremely xenophobic. So they believe that their culture is superior to anybody else's culture. And there was a controversy for a while with restaurants and pubs and izakaya bars and spas, different establishments having signs up that would say no foreigners allowed. And I've read a couple stories on my Facebook wall of people, you know, maybe 10 years ago coming to Japan and being told that like the restaurant is full when it's clearly not, because they don't like white people, they don't like foreigners. And of course that's really bad. I think most people wouldn't stand for that. And then I've spoken to people living out here who teach English. I know there's one gentleman from Saudi Arabia, a really nice guy, and he had a laugh because one of his students' parents calls him the equivalent of Mr. N-word, right? So there's a Japanese word that's equivalent to the N-word, and he follows that by the suffix san. So it literally means, how are you doing, you know, Mr. N-word. So horribly racist and demeaning. And he just thinks it's funny, but honestly, I think that if he was, for example, an African American, I don't think he would think that it was that funny. So again, it goes back to that sense of superiority. Well, this video, we're almost out of time because my camera's almost up. Look, I still love Japan a lot. It's really, really beautiful. It's magical. It's enchanting. But nobody is more aware, I think, of these problems than Japanese people themselves. And I really hope that it's something that people get a grip on. Okay, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time.